this is Keita, he's just an ordinary student." Early in the morning, his older sister Akane rushed to work, telling him to eat breakfast properly and not to be late for school. He later heard that his sister had missed her train. After going outside for some fresh air, he learned from a neighbor that someone in their apartment complex had just been hit by a car. Although feeling sympathetic, the neighbor hoped Keita would occasionally come over for meals. He just nodded and promised to visit another time. Keita actually found it troublesome to be a nice person, believing that maintaining too many relationships would create obstacles and affect his own life. He then met his classmate Risa, who was happy that Keita was also running late because she didn't want to be scolded alone. Risa mentioned she had won a prize, and Keita thought she would invite him to share the reward, but she had already invited someone else and said she would invite him another time. He didn't really care though, as he had no intention of going anyway. They both arrived at class, and the teacher overlooked their tardiness. Not long after, Risa invited another classmate to attend the concert she won tickets for, while Keita was invited by classmates to go karaoke. He was about to accept, but then declined, claiming he was busy that afternoon. This was actually just another excuse Keita used to politely decline social activities he deemed unnecessary. He then went to the arcade and got something to eat. While reading at a shop, he met a young neighbor girl who, thinking he wasn't busy, wanted to invite him home for a meal, but he made up an excuse to decline. He later rode his bike to a restricted area and went up an unfinished highway to watch the sunset. That evening, while passing by the train station, he unexpectedly saw someone who looked very similar to the woman who had been in the accident at their apartment complex that morning. Meanwhile, Risa, who was at the concert, was told by her friend that there was someone who looked just like her. Risa suspected the doppelganger legend might be true. Keita tried to follow the woman at the train station. Years ago, his mother had encountered her own doppelganger and died in an accident shortly after. The next morning, when Keita went to school, he heard about Risa encountering her doppelganger and warned her to be careful not to have an accident. She thought he believed in the legend, but he was just telling her to be more careful. That evening, Keita returned to the train station to look for the woman from yesterday. After waiting for a while, he went to eat noodles for dinner. While eating, a girl surprisingly approached wanting noodles too, but she didn't have enough money, so Keita gave her his bowl. The owner wanted to treat him to another bowl, but he declined, saying his father would send him money soon. He told her about how his mother died in an accident and how he somewhat believed it was because of the doppelganger legend that each person has 3 different forms in the world, and if someone meets their doppelganger, they will die. However, the girl revealed that the doppelgangers humans believe in are fictional. The truth is that Earth created one person with 3 different forms, each with a different destiny. If someone meets their other form, the form with the weaker destiny will be absorbed by the stronger one. Suddenly, a man appeared and struck the girl hard on the head with a stick. She was knocked away, and when the noodle shop owner tried to intervene, he was also pushed aside. Keita then charged at him with a chair, but was also thrown aside. The girl stood up, saying this was the first time someone had treated her to a meal. She then blocked the big man's attack, and they engaged in an intense fight. But the girl was soon thrown towards a car. He then used his stick to choke her, but she resisted, causing him to slam her head against a window. However, since he was ordered to bring her back alive, she managed to kick him away to safety. She then figured out his movement pattern and countered with multiple consecutive hits. She punched him away and continued attacking relentlessly. After softening him up with many hits, she delivered a final blow to his face to finish him off. She then came to apologize to Keita for involving him in this incident. She revealed to Keita that she was Kiro and a divine entity. She then left because her purpose was to deal with her brother. The police arrived afterward, but the baseball bat wielder had already fled. When returning home, his sister called him for dinner. He thought she was his childhood friend and that she didn't need to take care of him so much. But she knew if she didn't cook for him, he would eat poorly again. Akane knew he avoided contact with people because he feared bringing misfortune to others like what happened to his mother. However, right after that, he heard that Risa's family had died in an accident. The next day at school, confirming Risa's death, he was heartbroken and ran from the classroom. He went to an unfinished highway to scream out his pain. That afternoon, he met the neighbor girl who told him she had just encountered her doppelganger. Right after that, she ran across the road and was hit by a truck. This part I have to blur to avoid penalties. Kuro felt sorry for the girl because she wasn't the entity with the greatest destiny. Just as he saw the neighbor running out, Kuro immediately disappeared. Meanwhile, the bat wielder was being punished by his boss for letting Kuro escape. The boss repeatedly slashed the bat wielder and then ordered his subordinates to split up and capture Kuro. He would let her meet her brother after he absorbed all her power. Keita later attended the neighbor girl's funeral and returned home depressed. Akane could only hope he would cheer up soon. During this time, those people had begun splitting up to hunt for Kuro. At school, Keita was distracted and not focusing on lessons. The teacher asked if anything was wrong, thinking he was sad about Risa's situation. The teacher wanted him to confide if possible. He asked the teacher about doppelgangers, but the teacher seemed skeptical, so he dropped it. That evening, when returning home, Keita saw lights on and thought Akane was there. But when he entered, he found Kuro. When he asked why she was there, she said she was hungry and her dog remembered Keita's scent and led her there. She was then invited in by Akane. Akane later came home and explained she let Kuro in because she seemed to know Keita, as Kuro mentioned he had treated her to noodles before. But Keita drove Kuro away, not wanting to be involved with her. She accepted leaving, and he then told Akane to go home too, saying he had already eaten out. Akane left, but soon after, Keita noticed she had forgotten something and planned to bring it to her house. On the way, he saw Kuro in the playground and gave her some food. He asked what she really was, and she explained she had the responsibility to protect the world's balance. Every soul has an energy source in their body, and the 3 doppelgangers of that soul possess different energy levels. When one entity absorbs another, the winner receives the loser's energy level. If a soul collects all energy from 2 doppelgangers, that person will gain tremendous power. Keita must have doppelgangers out there too, but he hasn't met them yet. This is the world's principle, and he can't deny it. After eating, Kuro left to avoid bothering Keita further, but the group hunting her had found her there and surrounded them both. She recognized them as people from an ancient tribe. The leader revealed he had dealt with 4 balance protectors like Kuro before. He wanted the power of people like her to reach a higher level. He then sent his subordinates to attack, but they were quickly handled by Kuro. However, he launched an invisible slash that Kuro couldn't dodge in time. He then launched multiple attacks at her, revealing this was a skill he learned from absorbing the power of 4 world guardians like her. But when he was about to absorb her power, Keita distracted him by calling the police. He knocked away the phone and delivered a strike directly to Keita's heart. He thought Keita was dying, so he quietly retreated, but then did this meaningless act. Kuro then rushed to punch him away, grabbed Keita, and fled. She knew there was no other way to save Keita, so she created a magic circle. When the leader found them, he realized Kuro had made a contract to save Keita's life. Kuro then stepped forward to confront him. She could now see through his techniques and managed to get close enough to throw a punch. But he noticed the contract had weakened her and immediately used his wind whip to bind Kuro. He then slammed her to the ground, but she channeled electricity through a fallen power line nearby to shock him. Somehow, Keita managed to transfer power to Kuro, allowing her to punch him straight into an electric pole. Keita then lost consciousness, and his fate changed significantly after this incident. The next morning, Keita woke up at home and saw blood on his shirt. Realizing what he experienced wasn't a hallucination, he went to the living room and found Kuro there. She explained their hearts were very compatible, so in the coming days, he couldn't go too far from her to avoid heart necrosis. She had given him her heart while she kept his heart in her body to heal it, and he needed to stay close to her until he fully adapted to that heart. Just then, Akane arrived and didn't understand what was happening. Kuro explained everything to Keita's Akane about how he had made a contract with her and how they both needed a connection to increase their power. Then Kuro mentioned how she and Keita had exchanged hearts by showing Akane the scar on Keita's body. His sister was shocked while Kuro joked about saving Keita's life. He got angry and said everything was her fault from the beginning. He went back to his room while Kuro seemed very sad after those words. Meanwhile, the organization of the person who had attacked Kuro earlier was conducting some inhumane experiment, and this white-haired person was the one Kuro wanted to kill her brother. The teacher later called Keita to ask if he was okay because he had heard that one of his students had gotten into a fight. He said he was fine, and the teacher wanted to treat him to a meal thinking he was alone. But he said his Akane was there so the teacher needn't worry. Kuro had just finished bathing and came out to thank Keita's Akane for letting her bathe there. The sister then took Kuro to change clothes while Keita went to sleep. Kuro then told Akane she wanted to stay close to Keita to become more harmonious, because if they couldn't harmonize, her powers would disappear. That afternoon, Akane took Keita and Kuro shopping because she wanted to get Kuro some new clothes, and Keita had to come along due to his current condition. They chose quite a lot of clothes, and everything looked good on Kuro, so they bought them all. Shortly after, the outing ended and all three headed home. The next morning, Keita returned to school and asked Kuro to stay at home and not wander around, saying he would be back in the afternoon. However, during the day, two people hunting Kuro found Keita's house to capture her. Kuro tried to fight back, but was caught by them. They knew she hadn't fully recovered her powers. They then beat Kuro up. At school, Keita suddenly felt pain and suspected something had happened. Meanwhile, Kuro took advantage when the two were distracted to push them away, grab Keita's handkerchief, and jump from the balcony, climbing down an electric pole. Keita was about to head home when the teacher called him to stay because now he believed what Keita had said about doppelgangers. Kuro had her dog smell Keita's handkerchief to track him. The teacher now believed Keita about doppelgangers and wanted him to help create an ideal society. But Kuro ran in and asked Keita to help her fight. She then realized his teacher was one of her pursuers. The teacher then revealed his true face and decided to keep both of them there until others arrived. He rushed to attack Kuro, and she was quickly caught because she hadn't fully recovered her power. She elbowed him to break free. Both of them continued their martial arts exchange, but Kuro was completely overpowered when she was punched out of the classroom. Seeing the teacher continuously punching Kuro's face, Keita approached and grabbed a fire extinguisher. When the teacher chased after him, he sprayed it in the teacher's face and rushed to help Kuro escape. However, the teacher quickly blocked both of their paths. Kuro wanted him to unite with her by thinking about fighting. She then ran away to prevent the teacher from targeting Keita, but when she tried to fight back, she was kicked away by him. Keita begged the teacher to stop, but he expressed regret, saying he had hoped Keita would become a high-level person by absorbing all the twin powers, as the teacher noticed he had much better potential than Risa before. Keita then realized that the teacher was the one who orchestrated the accident to make Risa transfer all her power to her twin in order to create more high-level people. He decided to eliminate the teacher to prevent situations like Risa's from happening again. The two officially united, and Kuro quickly rushed in, delivering an uppercut to the teacher's jaw and punching him out of the school building. They both then took the opportunity to escape, and Keita knew he could no longer turn back and wondered if fighting was the only way to survive in this world. Meanwhile, Keita's Akane was at work when he suddenly called to inform her of something, but she couldn't return home as she was on shift. While working, a man suddenly approached her position and needed some help. This person suddenly grabbed her hand, and she didn't know how to handle it as she thought he was a foreigner, but a little girl came and pulled the man away. As the two left, we learned that these two weren't ordinary people as they could sense a great energy within Akane. They also noticed that the Guardian's energy they had sensed days ago was now weakening, apparently due to a contract, and somehow Keita's Akane had energy very similar to a Guardian. When they suddenly saw Akane rushing away, they decided to follow her. Meanwhile, Keita and Kuro had stopped at a restaurant. While Kuro was uncertain about what to order, Keita told her to choose randomly. Keita then met up with Akane and told her what had happened. She asked why Keita didn't report to the police, but he worried that the police couldn't solve his current problem. Kuro also disliked the police, not because enemies had infiltrated them, but because she was once chased by police just for taking bananas from a roadside stall. However, that was clearly theft. She was arrested and put in jail, and had to punch through the wall to escape. She believed the police were bad people and untrustworthy. Kuro then asked Akane if she could order an ice cream and was happy because both Keita's siblings were good people. Akane thought that if Keita took the time to explain, perhaps the police would help them, but he didn't believe that could happen. Kuro revealed that all the unusual events in the city were caused by her brother, and when she said she would deal with her brother, it wasn't a joke. She was certain her brother had the entire city under his control, but she believed that with the power of combining with Keita, she could win against everyone. However, he wanted her to stop deciding his life for him. He said he didn't want anything to do with her anymore, as she only dragged him into danger and now he couldn't even go home. He noticed people were paying attention, so he sat down and remained quiet. The two people who had followed Akane had figured out who the Guardian they sensed was, and for now, they decided to leave Kuro as she was without taking immediate action. Meanwhile, Kuro's brother Hiyu had brought the teacher back and asked if he had any information to share to save his life. He told Hiyu that the person he encountered was Kuro, so Hiyu spared the teacher's life. However, he spared him not because of this information, but because the teacher was someone who had defeated his own twin and thus still had value. But Hiyu would still conduct some experiments on him. We then meet a character named Daichai, who works in a large corporation, but his real job is to find doppelgangers of several important figures under the orders of the chairwoman Yuki. She wants Daichai to quickly find the important doppelgangers she needs. Daichai then sat at his desk and discovered Keita's group. It seems he had some acquaintance with him. That evening, Keita's group left after paying for all of Kuro's food bills. Suddenly Keita noticed that Car had been there all day, so he knew they were being followed and actively pulled Akane away. All three then ran to the back and tried to escape through an alley, but were blocked by several motorcyclists. They were Hiyu's people and came here just to take Kuro back. As for the other two, the underlings could handle them however they wanted. They then drove their bikes to attack, forcing Kuro to fight back. But one of them used his power to tie her up and drove towards her to ram her. Keita then tried to activate the contract to give power to Kuro, but his sister was left behind, forcing the man who was tailing the group to rush out to protect her. He then ordered Hiyu's subordinates to leave or he would deal with them all without mercy, but they were still being arrogant, so he had to knock them all off their bikes. They then agreed to leave. They noticed Keita had realized they weren't ordinary people. Kuro recognized that the opponents were also a pair of guardian and contract partner. Akane recognized both of them and was about to go thank them when Keita held her back. He knew these two people had been following his sister to find him and Kuro. When the man approached Keita, he punched back and said he wouldn't accept them dragging his sister into trouble just to serve their personal goals. The other two felt challenged and asked if he dared to fight. Kuro decided to join the battle and rushed at the opponent. Just as she threw her first punch, the enemy caught Kuro's hand, forcing her to back off. She then rushed in, throwing continuous attacks, but was kicked back. However, she managed to block it and threw a hook punch back, but the man dodged it and acknowledged she had some real strength, though he still maintained he wouldn't use the unified state. He then threw a kick, and although Kuro dodged, she still got hit lightly on the face. He was now actively attacking to pressure Kuro. The girl asked Keita if he wasn't going to unify. Seeing Kuro being pushed down to the ground like that made her ask what reason Kuro had to contract with someone like Keita. Keita then realized that Kuro had always been trying to protect him and transmitted fighting spirit to Kuro so she could escape. He asked if she could win if they unified, but she wasn't sure. They then unified and Kuro was now much faster and completely dominated the man. She then threw a flaming punch that blew away the opponent. The girl told them both that was a special technique, generally called Exceed. It wasn't like what the motorcyclists earlier had used. Theirs was a low-quality version while the Guardians like them had the original version. This technique is created when a Guardian receives energy from their contract partner. Kuro then wanted to finish it and rushed in to throw another Exceed, but the girl also used her own technique and created a shield to deflect Kuro. Their side had now also used unification to fight seriously. Keita was now out of energy, but the other side had no intention of showing mercy. The man then created many clones and continuously attacked Kuro. Both she and Keita were knocked down before they stopped. They explained they just wanted to talk, and this fight was their self-defense against Keita's hostile attitude. The group then returned to Keita's house to talk. Both of them revealed they were from the European Guardian Alliance. They explained the reason they came here was to investigate the energy imbalance in Japan recently, and so they found clues from Akane because they discovered she carried an energy different from normal people. The reason for this could be due to contact with a Guardian for some time. Keita asked them about when the abnormalities in Japan began, and someone investigated that it started 8 years ago, with the only clue being from this photo. Meanwhile, Hiyu called someone and asked them to handle things for him since his subordinates were all useless. Keita's group discovered his mother in this photo, taken in her hometown. They weren't sure if it was actually his mother or a doppelganger, but the photo was taken half a year before his mother's death, so everything now remains a mystery. The Alliance still hasn't found the mastermind behind these abnormal incidents. Since it was time, both of them headed home. Keita asked what he should do if attacked again, and they said he shouldn't worry since he can now fight alongside Kuro. They were then seen off by his sister Akane, and they gave her their contact number to call when needed. Upon returning, the two Alliance members decided to investigate further and wait for clearer information from the organization before taking action. Kuro decided to visit Keita's mother's hometown to investigate because she knew her brother was hunting the Guardian who appeared in the photo they just saw. She would also try to investigate the mystery about his mother. Keita asked if she knew how to get to his mother's hometown since they would need to cross the sea. Kuro planned to swim there, but Keita decided to go with her because he didn't want to trouble Akane anymore. Kuro then went to take a bath, while Keita noticed that the pieces of the mystery were gradually coming together and revealing everything, and things were progressing very quickly. We then meet a red-haired girl who works for Hiyu to get medicine to keep her terminally ill husband alive. Hiyu wants her to bring Kuro back and to be as gentle as possible. Meanwhile, Keita and Kuro started looking for ways to book tickets to Okinawa, his mother's hometown. Keita planned to return to his old house to get money and asked Kuro not to let Akane know about their trip to Okinawa because he didn't want his sister to worry more. When he left the apartment, the red-haired girl suddenly drove up to him. She introduced herself as Mikami, also a Guardian, but her mission was to take Kuro away, so she would leave him alone if he handed over Kuro. When he refused and turned to run, she grabbed him. Suddenly, she realized something. Kuro sensed that Keita was in trouble and rushed out of the apartment, bumping into Akane. Suddenly, Keita called his sister saying he wanted to meet Kuro. Mikami demanded Kuro come to a designated location if she wanted to see Keita again, as she now realized Keita had been captured. Meanwhile, the two Alliance members found Hiyu's subordinates' hideout. After confirming the information was correct, they called for people to move in. Hiyu met with Daichai and his boss Raisin, who were plotting to make their superior race the rulers of the world and surpass the Guardian race. The group of Guardians finished dealing with Hiyu's subordinates' hideout, discovering they had piled up bodies of Guardians whose energy they had drained in a room. They also found where Hiyu drained energy from other Guardians, which he did using a stone stolen from the Guardians' sacred ground. Mikami took Keita to her house to talk. She wondered why Kuro chose Keita for a contract since he was a weak vessel. If he met his doppelganger, he would surely die because his body contained too little energy. When a guardian makes a contract with a weak vessel, there are consequences. Before she could explain further, she had to check on her husband. Kuro had found the location and decided to enter alone, promising Akane she would bring Keita out and go to Okinawa together. Mikami noticed Kuro's arrival and told her husband things might get noisy outside. Now we know why her husband hasn't gotten better. He never took the medicine Mikami brought home. Kuro was very happy that Keita was safe, but he blamed her for not telling him that he was a weak twin. She didn't want to say it because she believed both of them could still accomplish things. However, Mikami believed that making a contract with a weak twin was taboo, as weak twins wouldn't have enough energy to help perform exceed techniques, and forcing them to fight would only cause them to age and die gradually. Mikami's husband then stepped forward and revealed that he was an example. He had contracted with Mikami despite knowing he was a weak twin, and although he was only 30 years old, he had aged like this. Mikami regretted that Keita and Kuro didn't trust each other like they did. Mikami believed Kuro deliberately contracted with Keita because she only saw him as a tool to help her fight, so she would kill Kuro and free Keita. Mikami's contractor revealed that he contracted with her because he wanted to help her fight. He hoped he would die in battle, but now Mikami didn't want to use his power. He asked Keita if he really wanted Kuro to die. Why wasn't he helping her fight? Keita finally came to his senses after witnessing many deaths right before his eyes. He decided to trust Kuro and transfer his power to her. Mikami then decided to listen to her husband and use unification once more to fight together. She rushed in and rammed Kuro to push her back. Both sides realized they couldn't prolong the fight too long to avoid affecting their contractors. However, just as Mikami knocked Kuro down to launch a series of attacks, her contractor had begun reaching the limits of his life. Kuro was waiting for an opportunity to launch a single strike to turn the tide, so she kept blocking. When Mikami raised both hands, Kuro launched an exceed attack to counter, but Mikami hadn't fallen yet and threw a punch that knocked Kuro unconscious. However, her contractor had also exhausted his life force and passed away. He advised her not to hate the other two because they had given them both a chance to fight together one last time. The next day, Keita's group returned home and Kuro was happy that Akane could go with them to Okinawa. Keita was still hesitant because he would die if he fought. Meanwhile, when Hayu returned to his lair, he was shocked to find it had been ransacked and his precious stone had been stolen. He sent people to track down those who had ransacked the place and said he would pay Kuro a visit to prevent anyone from touching her except him. The next morning, as Keita's group was leaving, they unexpectedly encountered a couple being chased by two of Hayu's subordinates. All three followed to see what was happening, but after chasing for a while, the girl tripped, so the boy decided to stop running and fight. Kuro thought they didn't need to intervene because this boy could handle it himself. The boy then rushed in to kick one person's mouth and elbowed the other. When they grabbed him, he jumped back and kicked one's face, then jumped up to strike the other. The girl complained that he should have fought from the beginning. Kuro then called the boy Yakumo, and he recognized her as the princess and quickly ran over. She was the princess of the tribe and Yakumo had been looking for her all this time. The girl was Riona, who had absorbed all the energy from her other selves. She was kidnapped by the city's largest corporation, which operated convenience stores and supermarkets on the surface, but secretly created enhanced humans like her inside. Although they promised a luxurious life with everything she wanted, she escaped because she didn't like being experimented on every day. While she was running away, she was accidentally saved by Yakumo and then contracted with him. The reason Yakumo was so strong was that he was Hiyu's #1 disciple. When Keita wondered why that corporation wanted to create such enhanced humans, she wasn't sure. She only knew that the corporation had sent several enhanced humans to Okinawa for something. And Yakumo also knew that the corporation's chairman was Raizen. Keita wondered who this Raizen was and wanted Kuro to explain, But Yakumo wanted Keita to be careful with his words because Kuro is the daughter of the Shigami clan leader, the most powerful guardian clan, and Raizen was actually her brother, not Hiyu. At the airport, Kuro had told Keita that she and her clan lived in the Holy Land, a place watched over by guardians to maintain the world's balance. On a normal day in the Holy Land, she and Raizen were taken by their mother to a ceremony where their mother would enter a dream to prophesy the clan's future. Their mother had a strange dream but didn't tell anyone about it. Not long after, Kuro heard from Yakumo that her brother had massacred most of the clan members. Wait, the brother kills the clan members while the sister seeks revenge against the brother. Why does this background seem so familiar? When Kuro heard that her brother had taken their mother to the Holy Stone, she rushed to find them. She saw the bodies of clan members, and when she arrived, her brother had already killed their mother. Raizen said he would change this world and disrupt its balance. He then left her there to die slowly, and now she wants to find Raizen to ask why he attacked the clan when he loved it more than anyone. Surprisingly, Hiyu came to meet both of them. According to Kuro, he was expelled from the clan after bringing humans into the Holy Land for experiments. He claimed that through these experiments, he learned how to create artificial guardians by extracting energy from guardians and transferring it into high-level humans. Hiyu offered to let Kuro meet Raizen if she agreed to abandon Keita, but she refused, so he pushed her aside and kicked Keita. He claimed she had no reason to protect Keita, and he also gave Keita a chance if he was willing to use unification. He would acknowledge Keita as worthy of Kuro. But Keita was still hesitant about using unification, so Hiyu found it pathetic that he was just a weak twin who didn't dare use unification. Keita decided to stop being afraid and unleash his power for Kuro to fight. She launched an Exceed attack but only pushed Hiyu back a little. He counterattacked, and then Riona and Yakumo arrived. Both used unification, and Yakumo rushed to punch Hiyu. Although he managed to kick back, Hiyu decided to meet the group later, and next time he would bring his contractor for unification. Hiyu later met with his subordinate who informed him they had found the location of the escaped test subject. But since Hiyu had already found Riona, the subordinate was now useless and was eliminated. Keita now somewhat empathized with Kuro and decided to fight alongside her to repay her for saving his life. They later boarded a plane, and Keita realized it had been a long time since he visited his maternal hometown. Akane decided to be more intimate with Keita, as she was his childhood friend after all, but Keita didn't want Kuro to misunderstand. However, Kuro was only focused on food, so she wasn't concerned at all. Soon after, the group arrived in Okinawa, but Kuro noticed the energy levels there were strangely high. Putting that aside, the group quickly rented a car and headed to Keita's grandfather's house. Along the way, Kuro was intently watching the ocean, but Keita said he had seen it so much as a child that he was now bored of it. After some time traveling, the group arrived at a small village and found Keita's grandfather's house. He went inside to look for his grandfather, but couldn't find him, so he checked the backyard. His grandfather, though elderly, still diligently practiced martial arts regularly so he could proudly declare, "I'm over 70 years old and I'm not afraid of anyone." When they went inside, Keita took out a photograph to ask his grandfather if his mother had come here when this photo was taken, but he wasn't sure. Moreover, when Kuro mentioned twins, it made his grandfather curious. She started to explain, but Keita interrupted. His grandfather noticed that he wasn't ready to explain yet, so he would give him more time. That evening, he prepared a lavish meal to treat his grandson. He also invited Akane to have a drink, but she wasn't very keen on drinking. However, after a while, she decided to have one cup and then kept asking for more until she got drunk without realizing it. Keita then invited Kuro to go outside to stargaze. She noticed that Keita had become more relaxed than before. The next day, Keita's group went to the beach to have fun. That afternoon, when they were returning, the group unexpectedly encountered two guards of this island. They thought Keita's group was like others who came here to steal the Holy Stone. They tried to explain, but the two guards wouldn't listen and rushed to attack. Kuro tried to defend, but these two people had very fast movement speed. When Keita tried to merge, one of them used ropes to tie him up and hang him on an electric pole to prevent him from merging. At this moment, he remembered the teaching of the girl from the Alliance, that he could still find ways to help his partner fight. The ring she gave him in Keita's pocket suddenly burst with power and helped him escape the ropes. He then merged with Kuro to fight. She was now faster than both of them and successfully defeated them both. She then threw a punch to demonstrate her strength and asked if they still wanted to fight. They both accepted defeat and started crying because they couldn't protect the Holy Stone. Meanwhile, Daichai had informed the high-ranking people brought by the corporation about their mission, which was to destroy the Holy Stone to break the energy flow that was maintaining balance in the world. Because Raizen and this corporation believed that this balance had made society corrupt, they needed to readjust the energy so that this world would be exclusively for high-ranking people and their guardians to live in. However, since they currently didn't know the exact location of the Holy Stone on this island, they would spread energy throughout the island and wait for the stone to react. As for Keita's group, they heard from the two girls that 7 years ago, a group of people came here to attack the Holy Land to destroy the stone. All the people in their tribe were massacred by this group, and only these two survived. They tried to protect the Holy Stone until the very end, and Keita's group directly stated that they had no intentions regarding that stone. However, that didn't mean the island wasn't under threat, as there was currently a very large energy source on this island. They decided to risk their lives to protect the Holy Stone at all costs and left. Meanwhile, Daichai received news that Keita was also on the island and hoped for a day to reunite with him. During this time, Hiyu had brought his contractor to Okinawa, and he was also determined to meet Kuro again. Meanwhile, Keita went to think. He didn't know what Kuro's brother wanted to create high-ranking people for, and more importantly, whether a weak being like him would have enough strength to save the world. He then returned home and told Akane to go to bed, but she sleep-talked about how much she trusted him. Meanwhile, Raizen had informed Yuki that he would be taking a trip to Okinawa, and he also promised to soon find Yuki's copies to deal with and turn her into a high-ranking person. Only then would her father hand over the corporation's inheritance to her. Raizen then realized they had visitors coming to find him. The Alliance of Guardians had come to the corporation to find Raizen. The girl wanted Yakumo not to go easy on Raizen because of their past relationship, but as soon as they entered, they were surrounded by enemies. However, this alliance was full of strong people, so they stayed behind to let the main characters leave first. They later met Raizen, and now we know that the white-haired uncle is Steiner and the girl is Ixelle. Raizen had heard of both of them, and Yakumo wanted answers for the cruel actions Raizen had done to the clan. However, no matter what was said, Steiner would not forgive Raizen. He only wanted to hear about why Raizen joined this corporation to create many high-ranking people. But Raizen thought he didn't need to explain anything to them. Raizen believed he simply wanted to rebuild the world, but he wouldn't be the god of that world. Steiner then didn't want to talk much and just merged to fight right away as everyone could see Raizen's enormous power. When Steiner attacked first, Raizen mostly focused on dodging and then launched an extremely powerful attack at the whole group. He then left and let his subordinates clean up the rest here. However, when Raizen had just left, the subordinates discovered that Steiner's group was still safe because Ixelle had used her power to block the attack. They quickly chased after Raizen, but it was too late as he had already boarded a helicopter and left. Meanwhile, we meet Daichai again. He was actually Keita's old friend and had sought out Raizen right after understanding the principle of doppelgangers in the world after witnessing Keita's mother's death. Daichai had also tried to infiltrate this corporation system and learned that the corporation Raizen was leading was secretly searching for doppelgangers to create high-ranking people. The reason Daichai came to find Raizen was to know whether he was a weak or strong entity. Raizen told him he was just a weak entity like Keita, but Daichai still believed he would survive by killing his stronger self. Ryzen hoped so too and wanted Daichai to continue serving him when everything succeeded. The next morning, Kuro was learning martial arts from Keida's grandfather, while Keida secretly went to the beach to practice some of his grandfather's martial arts moves when suddenly the ring lit up. He met his mother's doppelganger, and she also recognized that she had met him before. He asked if she was the person in the picture, and she admitted it. That day, she was brought here to fight with the Guardian on this island. She felt somewhat guilty for causing his mother's death and disappointed that another person had to face misfortune just because of this doppelganger rule. Meanwhile, the two remaining Guardian girls of the island were thinking about asking Kuro's group for help. Unexpectedly, they both met an acquaintance from the tribe who was still fortunately alive. However, they didn't expect that this person was a traitor who came back to deal with both of them. Kuro, not seeing Keida return, went looking for him and met the red-haired Guardian girl who came to report that her friend had been kidnapped. Hiyu then appeared before Kuro, and the red-haired girl recognized him as the one who massacred her entire tribe. But just as she rushed forward, Hiyu kicked her down right there and grabbed Kuro. He revealed that her Keida must be a dried corpse by now. Keida's mother's doppelganger had now begun to show her true face and sucked away the energy from his body. Hiyu then took Kuro to a cave to control her. Keida, who seemed to have been drained of energy, suddenly stood up when he saw Kuro's image. The doppelganger girl wanted him to step over her before going to Kuro, so he raised the ring and shot an attack at her. She was then defeated and Keida just left. Kuro had started to fight back against Hiyu, but was thrown into a stone pillar. He thought that since this wasn't holy ground, no one would come to protect her. But Keida had found them and gave Kuro some power to fight back against Hiyu. When Kuro then ran to Keida, she was blocked by Hiyu, forcing her to continue fighting. The red-haired girl had now woken up and quickly ran away to save her friend. The grandfather and Akane had to quickly run to find her. Meanwhile, the black-haired girl had met Ryzen, and he revealed that he had found a way to obtain the holy stone on this island, so the black-haired girl didn't need to resist anything, because the key he needed was her. As for Kuro, she needed to find a way to finish off Hiyu as soon as possible or Keida would fall first, but she couldn't find an opportunity to use Exceed when Hiyu kept continuously moving. Keida knew he had to give Kuro a chance, so he looked at the ring and asked himself if he could do it. He then tried to sneak attack Hiyu, but that doppelganger girl had warned Hiyu, helping him dodge. Keida now knew her name was Shinobu, and she was the contractor with Hiyu. After that, both merged and Hiyu would show Kuro what his Exceed was like. He created multiple water bullets and shot them at Kuro. But not only that, he could also turn water into ice to launch ice stakes at Kuro. She couldn't dodge them all and got pinned to a stone pillar. She then discovered that Keida was having his energy drained. Hiyu now revealed to both that Shinobu was also just a weak doppelganger and Keida's mother was the strongest doppelganger. But Shinobu had killed his mother so she could become a high-ranking person. Therefore, her case was considered special, and this special case allowed Shinobu to have the ability to drain energy from other people. Meanwhile, Daichai had come to meet Akane to invite her to the corporation, and the reason Daichai could invite Akane was by lying that Keida was there too. Hiyu revealed that special cases like Shinobu usually use absorbed energy from surroundings to maintain their merged form, so Hiyu could merge indefinitely without affecting his partner's health. He also let Kuro know that his Exceed allowed him to control all types of liquids. Therefore, he could make the blood in Kuro's body freeze or explode like this. He continued to torture Kuro. Keida now began to hear Shinobu complaining about how unfortunate she was before and how she envied the happy life of his mother. So she plotted to take away both power and luck from his mother to have a happy life like now. But he didn't see any happiness in her at all. He then punched her away and proceeded to provide energy for Kuro to merge. Shinobu asked Keida what he planned to do with his little power, and he wanted to try to find out. Kuro then activated Exceed and moved towards Hiyu. He wanted to see how strong she was, only to be surprised when he took a full-force punch from Kuro and was blown far away. Keita had tried to give all possible power to Kuro for her to launch a full-force attack, and Kuro had no idea when Keita learned this move. Keita now noticed Shinobu was about to die. She complained again about how life had been unfair to her and that she didn't want to die. Keita now realized that becoming like Shinobu was a way for a weak doppelganger to exist, and more than ever, he hated this world's principle even more when it had caused misfortune to so many people. When bringing Shinobu out of the cave, Keita met Daichai. Keita immediately recognized Daichai, but then suddenly coughed up blood and fell unconscious. Keita later woke up at Daichai's house. He revealed that he had faked his death before and then changed his name to work for this corporation. Daichai said straight out that he knew Keita was a weak doppelganger, and he wanted to help Keita resolve the current situation so Keita could continue living. However, Daichai didn't ask him to help Raisen, but to cooperate with him instead, as he was planning to fight against Raisen. Daichai told Keita about his past story, that when he discovered the doppelganger principle of this world, he had sought out Raisen's corporation and was recruited by Raisen. At the same time, one of his doppelgangers had an accident and died, so he decided to take and live under that doppelganger's identity. Daichai originally intended to help Raisen create a better world, but Raisen tried to exploit the doppelganger principles to manipulate the world, so he wanted to fight against him. Daichai believed that the fate of doppelgangers should be self-determined by humans and should no longer be supervised by guardians. It was time for humans to decide their own fate. Years ago, Daichai was always excellent in studies, but because of that, he isolated himself from others because he thought others were inferior to him. But because he was often straightforward, many people were irritated by Daichai. Keita always had to step in to resolve things, but he was seen by Daichai as a hypocrite because Daichai noticed that Keita always made friends with everyone but tried not to get close to anyone. However, they later sought each other out and became friends. Keita knew that Daichai's reluctance to get close to anyone was because he hated people's lack of effort, while Keita didn't get close to anyone because whoever became close to him would die, so he didn't make friends with anyone. Daichai was confident he could defy fate and wouldn't die, but when Keita heard about Daichai's sudden disappearance, he thought he could never escape that curse. Daichai wanted Keita's help because now he could help him escape the fate of a weak doppelganger by finding the locations of Keita's remaining entities and helping him avoid meeting them. Keita then took time to think, while Kuro went to meet Daichai privately to ask about Raisen's location. When she returned to the room, she overheard that Sister Akane didn't want Keita to continue putting himself in danger. Kuro knew she couldn't involve Keita anymore, so decided to leave alone, but Keita later decided to help Kuro until the end. He went to ask Daichai about Kuro and learned she had gone ahead, so he had to chase after her. Kuro then met the red-haired girl again. Both were about to search for the black-haired girl when suddenly the red-haired girl sensed that her friend had died. The trader from the island tribe had used the black-haired girl's blood to dip in water, and surprisingly an island appeared in the sea. Sister Akane had chased after Keita and decided to confess her feelings for him, hoping he would return safely. Raisen was now heading to that island while Kuro and the red-haired girl had met Keita, who decided to help Kuro because he was her partner. Meanwhile, Daichai had told Sister Akane to stay in his house, as it was the safest place, since she was also a weak doppelganger and her main entity was the corporation president's daughter, Yuki. However, right after that, Daichai suddenly called Yuki. Kuro and Keita had now officially encountered Raisen at the Holy Stone's location. Kuro was determined to defeat Raisen, but he asked what Kuro could do when her partner was just a weak entity. Knowing her brother wouldn't let her just talk, she immediately merged with Keita to fight. Kuro launched an Exceed attack, but it was completely useless as Raisen had decided not to show mercy to Kuro even though she was his sister. After fighting for a while, Raisen noticed that Keita wasn't too ordinary despite being a weak entity. But Raisen quickly caught Kuro's weakness and was about to counterattack when Keita shot a technique from his ring to support Kuro. However, Raisen declared he was still too inexperienced and punched Kuro away. Keita wanted to give Kuro more energy, but his body had truly reached its limit. Yet Keita still wanted to exchange his life to help Kuro. Raisen had to admit Keita was a true contractor, and he would respect both by letting them die together here. But right after that, Yakumo arrived to protect Keita's group. Steiner and others arrived shortly after. Excel wanted Kuro to quickly leave this place to them. Yakumo and Riona then went with Kuro to take Keita for treatment before it was too late. Steiner and Excel had begun to merge to fight. Steiner rushed in to attack and noticed that Raisen, despite not having a partner to contract with, was as strong as him. But Raisen was stronger in terms of speed, though his punch power couldn't match his. He deliberately made a fake attack to lure Raisen to counterattack and then circled behind to punch him away. But when Steiner was about to finish him off, Raisen blocked his attack with just one hand. Raisen then returned to the battlefield to continue fighting, while Kuro's group was trying to leave the island but was surrounded by Raisen's people. Yakumo and Riona merged to fight back against them. Meanwhile, Steiner had now used Exceed, splitting himself into 5 people and continuously attacking, putting Raisen in a difficult position. He couldn't block attacks from 5 selves simultaneously, so Steiner beat him badly. He revealed that the difference between them was that he had a partner to utilize power while Raisen didn't, but he still wasn't completely defeated and continued to return to fight. Raisen used again the technique he had used at the corporation to attack both of them, but Excel used a shield to block it. However, Raisen continuously launched that extremely powerful technique, making Excel wonder where he got so much energy from. Raisen broke through Excel's shield, but right after that, Steiner rushed in. Both were blown away by each other's power. Yakumo's group had now dealt with Raisen's subordinates, but right after that, one of Steiner's clones brought Excel out here. Yakumo worried that something had happened to him, which was why he deliberately saved Excel. Steiner had now been defeated but didn't regret fighting with Raisen, and Raisen would not forget Steiner because of this battle. Raisen then put his hand into the Holy Stone to destroy it, but just as its power was released, surprisingly Raisen was pierced by a light spear. The one who threw that spear was Rega, who seemed to have betrayed the island tribe. Actually, Rega had contracted with Daichai and both had secretly planned to betray Raisen. He didn't expect to be betrayed at this moment, and Daichai revealed that he had found a solution to fight against Raisen when the Holy Stone was broken. It would create a portal to change the world according to Raisen's will, and to close it would require an enormous amount of energy, and the energy source he needed was Raisen himself. Raisen would be sucked into that portal, but he still thought Daichai was being blinded by this world, and eliminating him wouldn't help Daichai achieve what he wanted. A large explosion then occurred and created a black hole in the middle of the island. 6 months had passed, and as Raisen predicted, the world had now become worse. Kuro had now lost her fighting purpose and just wandered around aimlessly. Daichai continued to create more high-ranking humans, but at a moderate level to help Japan develop more than other countries to bring Japan to the world's leading position. The Alliance of Protectors also had to cooperate with Daichai to maintain world peace. Daichai was still having trouble with the chairman's daughter, Yuki, because she didn't know she was just a weak doppelganger and still had delusions about her position. Sister Akane still couldn't contact Keita. Daichai had come to ask her about some things. Daichai tried to keep Akane here and not let her go anywhere, saying that they hadn't found Keita yet, so he wanted to keep her safe here because of his promise to Keita before. At the same time, Daichai also hid from Akane that Raisen hadn't been completely destroyed. He later attended a party with Yuki, and Yuki now began to miss Raisen. Meanwhile, the former members of Steiner's team and Yakumo had worked together. They all hid in a secret place away from Daichai's sight and had originally planned to attack that corporation to find Akane, but were stopped by their superiors. Kuro had now returned here to visit Keita, and she was still trying to find Akane to help Keita. Keita's grandfather was also here to take care of him. and Kuro thought she was the reason why Keita had been in a coma until now and hadn't woken up. Steiner's team had chosen to stay in Japan instead of returning to Europe because they wanted to handle all the root causes of the problem, which was that large corporation. They would continue Steiner's last wishes and support the main characters until the end. However, while they were planning, suddenly information about their location was leaked and enemies came here to deal with the group. Besides the purpose of dealing with those who opposed the corporation, they also wanted to find Keita for Daichai. Kuro now had to run quickly to Keita's location and leave everyone else to fight. The enemy was also forced to send fewer people to follow Kuro. She took down each person blocking her way one by one. And what I found unreasonable was why these people mostly just stood still waiting to be hit. Yakumo had now met a formidable opponent. Riona would not show mercy, so she told Yakumo to fight at full power without worrying about whether the opponent would die. At this point, Kuro had managed to run to Keita's room, but was interrupted by a pair of high-ranking people. Bernhard, Steiner's subordinate, suddenly realized that the enemy was also equipped with magic shields like Excel had before. The enemy had now restrained Kuro and was ready to take Keita away. But Kuro was determined to protect Keita at all costs because he had already overexerted himself providing energy just to help her. She was then thrown up to where Keita was and surprisingly heard his voice. He wanted her to continue using his energy to fight, but she feared hurting him further. However, Keita was grateful to Kuro for helping him see the true nature of the world when he was only running away. She was then thrown into a wall and punched through 3 more walls, but she could now stand up and launch an exceed attack at the enemy. When the enemy tried to use their shield, she launched multiple exceed attacks in succession, causing the shield to break quickly and the enemy to take the full impact right after. Kuro then ran to Yakumo's location to help his group. Seeing Keita regain consciousness boosted everyone's morale, and they used their full power to break the enemy's shields and finished them off with exceed attacks. All enemies were defeated, and Keita only now realized he had been unconscious all this time. He thanked Kuro for not giving up, and she now believed that with Keita's power, she could defeat anyone. Meanwhile, the corporation chairman announced to all his children that he would pass the vice chairman position to Daichai after he marries Yuki. His children were dissatisfied because he had promised to pass the position to one of them. But since Daichai would become his son through marriage, they couldn't object. Daichai soon received news about Keita regaining consciousness and disappearing with the group, but he continued the search. Daichai noticed that Keita seemed to have chosen to continue fighting and hoped they would meet again soon. Keita's group was currently staying in an abandoned area, but they knew that sooner or later, the corporation's people would find them. Keita felt foolish for trusting Daichai, which resulted in his sister Akane being in Daichai's hands. Kuro later had a private conversation with Yakumo, questioning why she left the Holy Land, and now Raizen was dead before she could get the answer she needed. This false peace couldn't change the fact that the world was becoming unbalanced and chaotic. At least she wanted to protect Keita and Akane, but now even that couldn't be fully accomplished. Meanwhile, Akane wondered how much longer she would have to stay in this room. During this time, Yuki was lamenting about feeling lost witut Raizen. Unexpectedly, her older sister called to inform her about being used by Daichai, and that Yuki was just a weak vessel. However, it didn't matter because her sister had found the location of Yuki's main body. All siblings in the family would support Yuki to prevent the corporation from falling into Daichai's hands. That night, Yuki arranged to meet her sister to discuss their plan, but Daichai showed up instead. He had already caught on to the sisters' plot and had made moves ahead of them, and Daichai was pleased that her family was still very clever. Daichai had to be direct in saying that Yuki was foolish for always thinking she could use others without realizing she was the one being used. Even Raizen, whom she always trusted, had only used her. So Daichai asked her directly whether she wanted to accept the predetermined outcome or create her own ending. Meanwhile, Keita planned to find Daichai to get answers, but everyone believed he wouldn't be able to do anything. However, Bernhard came to find them and informed them that Daichai was about to host a party to welcome the new vice chairman, and they would attack during that party. The party later took place, and the coalition chief also attended. Daichai told Yuki she could leave if she wasn't feeling well because no one there cared about her anyway. It was hurtful but true. The doppelganger of her friend Risa was checking if there were any weak doppelgangers at the party and discovered Yuki. She couldn't believe their young lady was actually a weak doppelganger, which made Yuki even more heartbroken and leave. At that time, Keita's group had infiltrated this corporation and went up by elevator to reach higher floors. They unexpectedly encountered a team waiting for them outside the elevator, but these turned out to be allies arranged by Bernhard. Daichai then stepped up to speak, suggesting that although they were high-ranking individuals, they should still value the sacrifices of weaker beings because it was thanks to those people that they achieved their current position. Yuki, who had spotted the gun in her bag and was about to write her own ending, suddenly noticed Keita charging straight into the party to confront Daichai. He believed that even though he was a weak entity, he would still try to overcome his fate and would not accept the laws of duality that Daichai was exploiting. Those words gave Yuki new life, causing her to abandon her suicidal intentions. The entire building then experienced continuous explosions, with guests fleeing the party one after another. The chief of the alliance rushed to check the situation and encountered Bernhard's group. He called for soldiers to deal with Bernhard and his team, but Bernhard showed no concern at all. Keita asked Daichai about his sister's location, but he refused to answer. Suddenly, someone came in to report an incident on the 15th floor, and Keita realized that was where Daichai was holding his sister Akane. However, Daichai then had Rega stand in the way of Kuro and Keita, while also revealing that Rega was the one who had defeated Raizen. Keita then requested to merge with Kuro, but she hesitated, forcing Keita to take initiative. The two merged and rushed to attack. Meanwhile, Yakumo and Riona were still clearing their path to reach Keita, while Bernhard was showing clear superiority over his opponents on the other side. Yakumo accidentally reached a rather strange room. When Kuro showed signs of struggling against Rega, Keita actively told her to use Exceed, but Rega blocked it and kicked Kuro away. Just as he was charging forward, Bernhard arrived to stop him, helping both escape. Yuki, now armed with a gun, had reached the room to find Akane. She revealed that Daichai had lied to Akane about her being the weak entity, as the truth was the opposite. Minutes before, she had considered ending her life to let Akane continue her destiny, but now she had become more selfish and wanted to continue living by killing Akane, even though it went against this world's laws. Yakumo unexpectedly encountered an acquaintance, Shinra, while Daichai tried but failed to open the door to stop Yuki. As Yuki was about to pull the trigger, she heard Akane's heartache about how people couldn't be equal when born into this world. Although Akane was a primary entity, the person she loved was a weak entity, so she understood Yuki's feelings. Hearing this, Yuki suddenly couldn't pull the trigger despite knowing she had to kill Akane to live peacefully. At this moment, Daichai entered, snatched the gun from Yuki, and slapped her. He had intentionally helped prevent Yuki from meeting her primary entity to prevent her death. But she had found her way here anyway. Since she didn't like being Daichai's puppet, he decided to eliminate her and promised to take good care of her family. But Akane rushed to protect Yuki, forcing Daichai to stop. Meanwhile, Kuro and Keita had reached Yakumo's location. Kuro was surprised to see Shinra again. He was formerly Raizen's close aide, but now worked for Daichai after Raizen's disappearance. Keita then realized he had made a contract with the primary entity of the little girl who lived next door to him. After merging, Shinra charged forward and punched Kuro away at incredible speed. Kuro then had to accept power from Keita to counterattack, but it was completely useless. Shinra grabbed Kuro and performed a primary lotus technique like Rock Lee's, causing her to crash headfirst into the ground. Riona informed Keita that the girl above had enormous energy, so he would need to go all out to have any chance of winning. He then channeled his power to Kuro, but just as she was about to use Exceed, her attack was suddenly completely nullified. She didn't understand what was happening to her, but Shinra didn't give her time to think and continued his assault. At this moment, Daichai wants Akane to step aside because she doesn't need to pity someone who is destined to die, unless she wants to die in place of Yuki. Meanwhile, Yakumo now understands that Kuro has been hesitant about using Keida's power, although her mind wants to use it. Her heart's emotions reject it, preventing her from combining properly. Yakumo had to attack first, forcing Keida to find a way to adjust Kuro's emotions right now. However, seeing that it would take too much time and he needed to help Yakumo, he used the ring and shot towards Shinra. Shinra thought he missed, but didn't realize that he intentionally shot at the ceiling to make it fall on him. Coincidentally, the ceiling was where Daichai and the two girls were standing. Kuro has reunited with her dog while Keida met Sister Akane again. He also encountered Yuki and thought she was the one who imprisoned Sister Akane, but she wanted to leave the conversation for later as they needed to leave before Daichai's people arrived. She had a private helicopter they could use. Bernard and his associates had been ambushed by Daichai's people and were defeated, while Reiga had run away. Keida's group was running behind after Yuki and Akane had boarded the helicopter. Because Yakumo was injured, they fell behind, and then Reiga used a technique to cut off Yakumo's path. Keida handed Akane over to Yuki and told them both to go ahead. Though reluctant, Yuki had to leave. Akane could only pray for Keida's safety afterward. However, they hadn't gone far when the helicopter malfunctioned and caused both to fall into the river. Yuki somewhat accepted her fate and sank with the helicopter. Meanwhile, Keida was now forced by Daichai to meet one of his incarnations. Daichai gave him a choice: accept his fate and die, or become a special case by killing his main incarnation right here. Keida hesitated for a moment but still decided to say no, as he didn't want to live by stepping on others' lives. He then decided to combine with Kuro one more time. She also decided to adjust her emotions and accept power from Kuro. Both successfully united once again, and their opponent was Shinra. Yakumo wanted to fight, but he hadn't fully recovered yet, so Kuro told him not to worry as she wouldn't lose. Kuro then rushed to attack and somehow managed to push back Shinra. He noticed that both were concentrating energy at one point when striking to increase attack power. Kuro and Shinra then continuously exchanged techniques, and then Kuro found an opportunity to use Exceed and blast Shinra away. He accepted defeat, and now Reiga and Daichai would face them both. Keida showed signs of exhaustion but still wanted Kuro to maintain unity to continue fighting. Daichai was confident that Keida had completely lost. Kuro rushed to engage with Reiga while Keida stayed behind planning to sneak attack Daichai, but Daichai had a shield to block his attack. Reiga then used Exceed and created a light sword to attack Kuro. Although she blocked it, she was continuously pushed back and managed to deflect it before being cornered. Reiga declared he wouldn't miss next time, while Daichai believed Keida had seen the difference between them. Keida then let Kuro use Exceed to counterattack. Reiga also used Exceed again, causing the two attacks to clash, but Kuro unleashed another Exceed attack that caught Reiga by surprise and pushed him back. However, the damage wasn't significant. Kuro now realized that Keida's main incarnation was gradually draining his power. Although Daichai played dirty by bringing Keida's main incarnation here, it was his way of forcing Keida to either kill his main self or die. Seeing Kuro continuously getting hit made it harder for Keida to make a choice, but now his strength was completely depleted. Keida still wanted Kuro to stand up and continue fighting. However, without power and Exceed from Keida, Daichai blamed Kuro for bringing Keida to this state. Keida now began to collapse from energy depletion, but he still wished for her to continue fighting. Suddenly, 2 marks appeared consecutively on Kuro and Keida's hands, strength gradually returning to him while Daichai was shocked and didn't understand what was happening. It seems the heart exchange has now fully adapted, allowing Kuro to share energy back to Keida and help him create a new energy circulation. Kuro then rushed to deal with all of Daichai's soldiers. Keida's true form managed to escape while Rega was forced to continue fighting. Kuro used a stronger version of Exceed to completely punch away Rega's Exceed. Rega collapsed and passed away, while Keida believed he had won and Daichai's ideals had completely failed. Bernhard at this time had also won against the enemy and returned to meet Kuro's group. Hearing that Rega had been defeated, he believed everything was now fine. But they later heard news that Yuki's helicopter had crashed into the river. She was confirmed dead while Akane was missing. At this moment, people on the streets suddenly felt difficulty breathing and collapsed. But Keida and Kuro's group weren't affected. Kuro then noticed the Holy Land where she once lived suddenly appearing in the middle of the city for unknown reasons, of course due to Raizen returning once again. Bernhard noticed this condition didn't affect their protectors and associates, but they knew a large amount of energy was flowing toward that Holy Land above, so Bernhard and his associates would gear up to check it out. Kuro and Yakumo also planned to make a trip home, and Kuro wanted Keida to keep looking for Sister Akane, but he wanted to follow her to face destiny once again. He wanted to support his irreplaceable partner. The group then set foot on the Holy Land, and they would need to reach the mountain peak. However, returning here somewhat reminded Kuro of her mother's past matters. The group then climbed the mountain together, but when night fell, Riona went for a midnight snack and startled Kuro, who thought someone suspicious was stalking the group. Although Keida went with Kuro, he was still worried about Sister Akane. The next morning, as the group continued on, they unexpectedly encountered a girl named Nam. She revealed she came here to record history, and would have arrived earlier if not for some troubles on the way. Nam shared that not long ago, all holy stones in the world had been destroyed, causing energy to suddenly concentrate in this city, and the only remaining holy stone here had enough energy to destroy the world. Since ancient times, gods had coexisted with humans and protectors in the world, but the gods became greedy and wanted to eliminate humans, forcing protectors and humans to ally and make contracts with each other to fight against them. The gods were sealed into holy stones, with the strongest being the supreme stone at this mountain peak. Before being sealed, the gods cursed humans, leading to the fate of the twins like now. And right at this moment, whoever could obtain power from the supreme stone would have enough strength to level the world. Suddenly someone named Aragi appeared. He was from the same clan as Mikami before, and he also came here for the supreme stone. But he revealed there were many others with similar intentions. Meanwhile, Bernhard's group had encountered Raizen, and they were all cautious since Raizen was the one who defeated Steiner. Aragi at this point had also started merging to fight with Kuro, but his associate used their power to press both down to the ground with gravity. Aragi was used to fighting in this area, so he could move around. Nam saw the outcome was clear, so Yakumo wanted to help, but Nam wouldn't let him interrupt the battle. When Kuro tried to stand up, Aragi threw a punch, though she dodged it. Its power was immense since in this gravity zone, downward strikes are doubled in strength. Aragi threw another punch directly at Kuro, so Keida shot toward Aragi, though he blocked it. Keida fired another shot at Kuro to make her fly up and strike down. Aragi was thrown back, but had to admit both strikes were extraordinary. He then used Exceed and transformed his hand into a demon form to attack. Kuro luckily dodged an extremely powerful strike, but Keida then shot directly at Aragi's partner to break her gravity field. Without that troublesome ability, Kuro quickly launched a full-power Exceed strike to blow away Aragi. He was defeated and believed Kuro would join Raizen in completely taking the Supreme Stone's power. Kuro was startled because indeed her brother had returned, as she had sensed Raizen's power since arriving here. Raizen had now defeated all of Bernhard's teammates. Bernhard decided to go all out in one move and rushed to lift Raizen up for continuous high-speed attacks. But he lacked sufficient power and was shot back by several of Raizen's palm strikes. Though he used speed to dodge, Raizen kept firing continuously, making it impossible to dodge everything. Kuro was now certain her brother had returned. Yakumo knew Raizen was heading for the Supreme Stone, and Keida wondered if they could completely defeat Raizen. Meanwhile, Mikami had reunited with Excel, and they formed a new contract to continue eliminating Ryzen. They had now reached the Holy Land to begin their final mission. During this time, Kuro was lost in thought and walked too quickly, so Keita had to ask her to slow down and wait for Yakumo. Nam thought Yakumo was slowing Kuro down, but Riona suggested Nam was nearly useless just watching from the outside. Suddenly, the group heard someone's voice ahead. Kuro sensed a protector's power, so Keita wanted to avoid fighting, but this was their only path forward. After walking further, Kuro confirmed someone was ahead. Yakumo and Riona stayed behind to rest. Riona had taken out food for Yakumo when Nam came to ask for some, but Riona didn't want to give food to someone who just sat around doing nothing. Nam then took some anyway when Yakumo wasn't paying attention, causing Riona to call her a thief. Angered that her noble mission was being disrespected, Nam went over and struck Yakumo. Meanwhile, Kuro's group had wandered into enemy territory where the enemy could control trees. Kuro's puppy felt offended at being called useless by Nam, so it went to find its own way. Nam had restored Yakumo's energy flow to help him recover quickly, so now she could eat the bread properly. Excel and Mikami had noticed how much Kuro's group had improved, but she had no intention to help as she needed to stop Ryzen as soon as possible. During this time, Kuro was captured, so Keita had to try shooting the binding ropes to help her, but he was soon caught too. Surprisingly, Kuro's puppy had found the enemy's position and barked to let Kuro know. Keita shot continuously to clear a path for Kuro to run. She soon found the enemy's location and was about to strike when suddenly the entire Holy Land shook violently, causing her to lose focus and get captured again. But everyone now knew Ryzen must be very close to the Supreme Stone. Just as Kuro was about to be dealt with by the enemy, she suddenly burst with power, causing Keita to be released, and Ryzen had to suddenly turn around because he sensed it. Mikami and Excel had now reached near Ryzen's location, while Keita quickly ran to Kuro. He found her standing in a crater, not remembering what had just happened. She thought the enemy had fled, so she pulled Keita away, while her opponent was shocked because that old man had died in pieces after what happened. Mikami and Excel had now encountered Ryzen. Ryzen knew Excel came for revenge for her partner, but wondered if Mikami was ready to fight to the death. However, Mikami was completely willing to fight to the death for Excel, because they both understood the feeling of losing a partner, and though they had only known each other briefly, Mikami believed she truly understood Excel, so was ready to fight seriously for her. Mikami then rushed in to fight, and Ryzen noticed Excel could control her shield remotely for protection. After fighting for a while, Mikami retreated to hide behind Excel's shield. Ryzen believed her shield would soon break. But immediately after, Excel created a shield surrounding Ryzen. Due to her ability to absorb and reflect damage, Ryzen was then shot to pieces and was pinned down by Mikami, who punched him in the face. However, he thought she was still too gentle and began to counterattack. Nam at this time found the puppy and wondered if her suspicions were true or not. Meanwhile, Mikami had completely failed. Kuro and Keita had run here only to hear Excel warn about how Ryzen now also had a contractor. After walking for a while, Keita reunited with Sister Akane and was happy that she was still safe. However, she turned out to be the one who had made a contract with Ryzen. Keita tried to ask Akane why she contracted with Ryzen, but received no answer, so Kuro asked Ryzen if he really did kill the entire tribe just for power from the Supreme Stone. He answered straightforwardly that he did, so Kuro and Keita were determined to defeat him. When Kuro rushed in to attack, Ryzen dodged and landed a hook punch, then followed up with another blow to finish her off, but was surprised that Kuro could still stand up. Ryzen realized Kuro and Keita had shared their life force to become stronger. Keita was determined to destroy Ryzen and destroy the Supreme Stone to end the curse that the gods had placed on humans. Ryzen then noticed their power growing stronger. When Kuro rushed in to attack, Ryzen threw her away, but Kuro continued receiving more power and approached to launch a close-range exceed attack. Raisin took that hit directly and was blown quite far away. Raisin stood up and launched a long-range attack at Kuro. She jumped to dodge while Keita fired from afar to force Raisin to block, allowing Kuro to land a precise full-power exceed attack that sent Raisin flying. Raisin was severely injured and Kuro believed she could now completely defeat her brother. But when she launched another full-power attack, Raisin surprisingly blocked it. He had received more power from Akane, leaving Keita unable to understand what was wrong with Akane. Raisin now took the initiative and pursued Kuro to attack. Both chose their moment to launch techniques at each other, but Raisin emerged victorious and punched Kuro away. Yakumo now realized Kuro had encountered Raisin and that Raisin also had a contractor. Yakumo blamed himself for being weak and failing to protect Kuro properly. Riona wanted him to stop blaming himself, while Kuro was still trying to stand up when Raisin launched long-range attacks at her, though she dodged most of them. For the final shot, Keita had to attack to support Kuro. Akane finally spoke up, advising both to leave and not interfere further. She wasn't being brainwashed by Raisin, but was entirely herself. Raisin revealed that Akane carried enough power to change the world, and Kuro realized Raisin had intentionally used Yuki from the start to help Akane reach her strongest state and contract with her. Kuro believed that just defeating Raisin would make Akane reconsider and return to Keita. She then attacked with everything she had. Keita sensed Kuro emitting energy similar to what he had felt before and felt uneasy about this. Kuro then rushed in with an exceed attack, and though Raisin dodged, he noticed her power was suspiciously increasing. He seemed to realize something and decided to put all his power into one technique. When Kuro rushed in, Raisin just stood still, then raised his hand to block Kuro's attack just in time and knocked her far away. Raisin used Exceed to fire multiple attacks at Kuro, then dropped her from above. Keita also began to collapse. Raisin knew their lives were connected, so if one died, the other would too. Yakumo had now started running inside and Kuro's dog had left Nam's hands to return to its owner. Raisin and Akane then passed by Excel and Mikami's location, making them realize Kuro and Keita had also failed. Raisin then encountered Nam and she asked what other intentions he had for the stone, but he just wanted her to focus on her recording work. After that, Raisin approached the stone and began using unified power to touch it. Raisin then destroyed the stone, causing the Dark God to return to the world once again. However, instead of letting the evil spirits from the Dark God flood the world, Raisin and Nam tried to stop them. Yakumo and Riona had now met Excel, who told them both to go check on Kuro and Keita. They found Kuro and Keita temporarily unconscious. Evil spirits had begun flooding out, forcing Yakumo to also unify to fight. Nam came to help and informed them that these spirits were targeting Kuro, so they needed to keep her away from them. Nam then took Keita and Kuro into a cave and began using magic to help Keita regain consciousness. She also tried it on Kuro, but it had no effect. She then revealed the truth about Raisin to Keita that from the beginning, he had wanted to destroy the Supreme Stone to draw out the Dark God's true form in order to destroy it. Everything started when Kuro showed signs of reacting to this Supreme Stone. Her mother then had to perform a prophecy ritual, but said nothing bad would happen. Raisin went to ask her mother and learned she had dreamed of a future where someone would stand up against the Dark God, and this was the treasure that helped Raisin find the person with the strongest energy to contract with. That person was Akane. As for Kuro, she carried a curse, and the elders would not accept letting her live to prevent the Dark God from being released into the world again. But she was tired of listening to the elders, so she wanted Raisin to handle everything himself. Raisin then tried to stop the elders, but they believed that even though the Prophet Queen foresaw someone opposing the Dark God, it didn't mean that person would win. Raisin became even angrier when they mercilessly killed those who tried to free the princess. Raisin had no choice but to eliminate the entire tribe. Although Yakumo witnessed some of this, he didn't understand the issue from the beginning, which led to Kuro's misunderstanding until now. Ryzen then had to kill his own mother to help break the seal at this holy site and gradually create the Supreme Stone as it exists now. Ryzen had done many things to create the necessary conditions to completely destroy all the stones in the world and release the Dark God early before it fully awakened. Now, Nam was betting on whether Kuro would bring disaster to this world or not. Yakumo had now received all power from Riona and temporarily dealt with the escaping evil spirits, while Ryzen launched an extremely powerful attack at the creature trying to escape from the dark sphere. The evil spirits then completely disappeared, but Kuro suddenly had a strange reaction. A large energy was released and Kuro now regained consciousness. Ryzen discovered that the two beings he had predicted indeed appeared. These two were none other than Kuro's two forms, and she was truly the incarnation of the Dark God. It seemed the original form within Kuro hadn't awakened yet, so whether she could survive now depended on whether they could defeat those two forms. The two forms then began attacking Ryzen. The red form created hell to burn Ryzen. Although Yakumo and Riona were quite far away, they were still affected by the technique. Kuro decided to go resolve the final enemy. Seeing Ryzen still alive, the red form attacked, so the blue form rushed in to launch an attack that froze everything ahead and created a snowstorm. Ice continuously rose up and blocked Kuro and Keida's path. Mikami and Excel were also pushed high up by these ice pillars. Kuro then met Ryzen again and he wanted her to stay away from here. Ryzen launched an Exceed to attack the two forms. Although he stabbed both forms with that technique, it wasn't enough. The two forms simultaneously launched two elements. Kuro had to go down to take Sister Akane to safety. The entire surrounding area was continuously frozen, then destroyed. Ryzen continuously defended against the attacks from the two forms and believed they weren't gods, but merely forms that he had awakened at the necessary time. Ryzen continuously punched both forms away, but they kept coming back to counterattack. He tried throwing both forms to one side and called Akane to activate the power from the bracelet. Nam realized this bracelet would transfer all the owner's power to their partner in one turn. It seemed Ryzen wanted to concentrate everything into this attack to completely destroy the two forms. His Exceed actually hit the target, causing a massive explosion, and the enemies completely vanished. But they then continued to regenerate their bodies, so Ryzen wanted to attempt another attack to completely eliminate them. But surprisingly, he was struck by lightning, as Kuro had now fully awakened. Kuro rushed to attack Ryzen, forcing him to retreat. Then the two forms completed their regeneration and ganged up on Ryzen. Ryzen was overwhelmed by all three and was blown far away. All three began to unite and Nam worried that Kuro would completely disappear afterward. Yakumo and Mikami had to rush in to stop the unification process, while Keida had to try to reach Kuro. Suddenly, Yakumo's group was severely injured and fell down, and Keida's words somewhat reached Kuro, interrupting the unification process. The two forms turned and planned to eliminate Kuro, while Keida had now entered her mind to call Kuro back to consciousness. He wanted her to continue being the Kuro he knew. She then unified with Keida and awakened from the Dark God, taking power from Keida and beginning to fight back against the two forms. Kuro launched an Exceed to knock away one form, and then used a stronger Exceed to blow away the remaining form. However, both continued to return to attack Kuro and turn to target Keida. He was targeted by both forms and their techniques, forcing him to separate from Nam and Sister Akane. Being isolated left Keida with nowhere to run, but Ryzen stood to shield him, and while Kuro held the two forms back, he launched a final Exceed to destroy them. Though they weren't completely destroyed, it at least bought more time while waiting for them to regenerate. Ryzen then exhausted his power and officially passed away. Just when they thought they had been completely defeated, the two forms surprisingly merged into a grotesque form to prevent their death. When Kuro rushed up to launch an Exceed, she was blocked by the Dark God and struck with an attack that split the ground into three. Nam tried to block it, but the entire mountain couldn't withstand that attack and began to collapse. Kuro continued fighting while falling with the Dark God, But she fell early and was shot 3 times by the dark god before Keita quickly shot back to stop the attack. Kuro took the opportunity to rush in to attack, but was knocked away and grabbed by the dark god. It began absorbing Kuro's power to return to its original form. Keita also felt his power being drained. Akane suddenly had an idea. Nom then rushed up to cut off the arm that was absorbing power from the dark god, while Akane and Keita combined the treasures in their hands to transfer power to Kuro. She now had her power back and rushed to push back the dark god with continuous attacks. She accelerated forward and launched a massive exceed to finish it off and successfully destroyed the dark god, or rather its form. When finished, Kuro returned energy to the entire world. Everyone now believed everything was over. When everyone woke up, they all thought this disaster was due to natural causes, so didn't investigate further. The world continued operating without knowing about the existence of its protectors. Not long after, Keita woke up at home and saw Kuro rummaging through his refrigerator. His grandfather and the red-haired girl would soon return to Okinawa. Akane came to cook for Keita's household every morning, and Keita wondered how long Nam planned to stay and freeload. Yakumo didn't want to be known as a freeloader, so he also rushed to work. When everyone was on the way to take grandfather to the airport, Riona came and brought cake, but Nam quickly took the whole bag of cake and ran away. While Kuro was thinking about returning home, Keita told her she could just stay. Excel and Mikami decided to return to Europe, and that afternoon, Keita and Kuro returned home first because Sister Akane had to look for work again. However, while returning, Keita heard about a girl next door who had encountered her doppelganger. Keita found this scene quite familiar and immediately rushed out to save the girl next door. Upon returning, everyone realized the curse hadn't been completely removed. Kuro would have to die for the curse to disappear, but if she died, so would Keita. Kuro then invited Keita to eat noodles. They returned to where they first met to eat noodles and chat about some things. Kuro vaguely talked about leaving and said she wanted to continue defying fate with Keita one more time. Keita understood her meaning, so the next morning, when Yakumo left the house, Kuro had her final meal before leaving for good. Keita then came out to bid her farewell and believed Kuro would return someday. That afternoon, Kuro sobbed because she truly didn't want to leave Keita, but she realized Keita was always with her through their contract, which made her feel somewhat better. Nam also left as her work was done. Yakumo bid farewell to Riona because she wanted to go her own way. According to Nam's account, the only way for Kuro to stop the curse from continuing was to accept the curse and return to the holy site to live, in order to seal the curse's effects from the outside world. Keita and Sister Akane then went to that unfinished bridge one more time to watch the sunset before returning home, and here the film ends.